That's my life now. I can't even begin to describe the humiliation. After 17 years, this is where I've landed. He won't speak to me unless the girls are in the room, like I'm some kind of contagious disease. Courtney, 42, living a real-life tragedy. It sounds so cliché, so unlike me. Brandon and I were the poster couple, 17 years married, 2 gorgeous daughters, a house that actually appreciates in value, perfect. Everyone said so. Relationship goals, they'd whisper. Brandon, bless his heart, never forgot an anniversary. No phone reminders needed. He'd bring home Thai food, my absolute favorite, when work ground me down. When Haley and Julia were small, he'd whisk them away for daddy days so I could have some blessed quiet. He actually listened, or seemed to, anyway, when I whined about office politics. He'd even rub my feet after I squeezed them into those ridiculously uncomfortable heels I insisted on wearing. For our 15th anniversary, he planned a whole weekend getaway, filled with all the things I claimed to love. My friends practically vibrated with envy. I could practically taste their resentment. We had the matching SUVs, the perfectly curated family photos, the inside jokes that were impenetrable to outsiders. From the outside, we were it. Other couples would actually ask us for advice. How do you still look at each other like that after all this time? They'd coo at neighborhood barbecues. I'd give that knowing smile, Brandon's arm casually draped around my waist. When other wives grumbled about socks on the floor or forgotten birthdays, I'd offer sympathetic nods, privately thinking, thank God I don't have that problem. Brandon wasn't like those other husbands. He was attentive, thoughtful, everything I thought I wanted, or maybe just everything I thought I should want. Around our 15th year, a restlessness started to fester. The predictability that had been so comforting started to feel like a cage. I could finish Brandon's sentences. I knew his every move, his every opinion. Date nights became stale reruns. Different restaurant, same conversation. Sex was a familiar routine. Not bad, but known. Too known. Little things started grating on my nerves. The way he cleared his throat before speaking. His obsessive triple-checking of the door locks every night. His utterly predictable reactions to everything. God, the predictability was suffocating. I'd stare at him across the dinner table as he droned on about spreadsheets and quarterly reports, and I'd think, is this it? Is this all there is for the next 30 years? Of course, I never said a word. What kind of monster complains about a genuinely good husband? So I smiled, I nodded, I played my part as the happily married wife, all the while feeling like I was slowly dissolving. I started working longer hours, volunteering for every project that came my way. I told myself it was about career advancement, but really I was just avoiding the soul-crushing monotony of my perfect life. The girls were teenagers then. Haley, 16, and Julia, 14, were completely absorbed in their own worlds of friends, activities, and social media drama. They needed me less, which left me with entirely too much time to wallow in my discontent. I'd see younger women at the office, single and carefree, and I'd feel a pang of something akin to envy. I started paying more attention to my appearance, updating my wardrobe, getting a haircut that shaved years off my face. Brandon noticed, of course. He complimented me, seemed pleased even. "You look amazing, babe," he'd say, and I'd feel a fleeting warmth before the restlessness flooded back in. I wanted more than compliments. I wanted passion. Something, anything. I started to wonder if anyone else would see that spark I thought had died. Then Eric started at the office. He wasn't conventionally handsome, not really my type at all, but he looked at me like he actually saw me. Not just Courtney the wife, Courtney the mom, but Courtney the woman. When we were assigned to the same project, I found myself lingering after meetings, inventing reasons to collaborate. We started grabbing coffee, then lunch. Just colleagues, I told myself, just friends, until we weren't just friends anymore. It happened after a late night at the office. Everyone else had gone home. We were poring over figures, crucial for the presentation the next day. My hand reached for a file at the same moment his did. Our fingers brushed, and in that instant the weight of 17 years vanished, replaced by something different, something forbidden. I told myself it was a slip, a momentary lapse, but it kept happening. I became someone unrecognizable, fabricating reasons to stay late at the office, deleting texts, weaving intricate webs of deceit. My affair with Eric consumed 6 months. 6 months of living a double life, feeling intensely alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, all while being crushed by the guilt of my betrayal. I rationalized it endlessly. Brandon had grown distant. The spark had faded. I deserved to feel desired. Eric seemed to understand me on a level Brandon never had. The mental contortions I performed to cast myself as the victim, not the perpetrator, were truly something else. Looking back, it's clear now that Eric's interest in me wasn't genuine. He was younger, ambitious, and probably saw me as a means to an end. But at the time, his attention was intoxicating. Every compliment, every stolen kiss in the stationery cupboard, every clandestine meeting at a hotel felt like air after years of slowly suffocating. I actually started to believe I was falling in love with him. Maybe I even convinced myself of it. I grew careless, took unnecessary risks. One evening, I left my phone unlocked while I showered, and Brandon saw a text from Eric that was impossible to misinterpret. Still replaying last night in my mind, looking forward to tomorrow. Not exactly subtle. When I emerged from the bathroom, Brandon was sitting on the bed, my phone clutched in his hand, looking like he'd just received the most devastating news imaginable. I'll never forget his expression, a mix of shock, pain, and worst of all, a disheartening lack of surprise, as if a part of him had been bracing for me to hurt him all along. "How long?" he asked, his voice chillingly devoid of emotion, more frightening than any shouting could have been. I initially tried to deny it, claiming it was nothing, just playful texts, a harmless infatuation. But Brandon's gaze didn't waver, those wounded eyes fixed on me until the truth began to unravel, though not the entire truth. I downplayed certain aspects, making it sound more like an emotional connection than a physical one, trying to portray myself as lost and confused rather than deliberately scheming. Still, enough truth emerged that night to obliterate everything we'd built. I anticipated yelling, broken objects, a dramatic exit. Isn't that how it plays out in movies? Instead, he simply sat there, nodding almost imperceptibly, as though confirming a long-held suspicion. When I finished speaking, he rose, walked to the spare bedroom, and closed the door behind him. The silence was far more deafening than any outburst could have been. The following day, my world crumbled at work as well. Brandon had apparently spent the night delving into my messages and emails. He'd forwarded the most incriminating ones to himself and then contacted HR. By midday, both Eric and I were summoned and terminated for violating the company's policy regarding workplace relationships. Eric wouldn't even acknowledge me as we packed up our desks. We were suddenly strangers again. That night, I desperately tried to reason with Brandon, cried, pleaded, promised it would never happen again. He simply watched me perform my remorse with vacant eyes before quietly stating, "The girls can't find out about this. We'll figure out how to proceed, but they cannot know their mother is a cheater." The word resonated like a physical blow. I wanted to retort, to explain that it was far more nuanced than that our marriage had issues long before Eric came into the picture. But one glance at Brandon's face, and I understood the futility of it all. In his perception, there was a before and an after, with everything in between rendered meaningless. In the weeks that followed, I exhausted every avenue to try and mend the damage. I secured a new job swiftly to demonstrate my commitment to responsibility. I started therapy, hoping he would see I was genuinely working on myself. I left little notes around the house, reminiscent of our early days together. I attempted to initiate intimacy. God, that was a monumental failure. He literally turned away from me and left the room. The only times Brandon would engage with me at all was in the presence of Haley or Julia. Then, miraculously, he would transform into a reasonable semblance of his former self. Pleasant, conversational, even flashing an occasional smile. Our daughters remained blissfully unaware that anything was amiss. That's how convincing his performance was. The instant they were gone, I felt the air thicken around me, making me suffocate. I felt invisible, not seen, not heard. After 2 months of this, I started to feel claustrophobic, trapped. Brandon had always hinted at desires he never fully voiced, fantasies kept locked away. One night, after the kids were sound asleep, I blurted out that maybe we should consider an open marriage. Just for him. I told him I'd be okay with it if he wanted to see other women. Maybe it would help him get past my mistake. I even went so far as to offer to orchestrate the whole thing. God, I can barely stand to remember it. But I actually suggested I could find women for him, maybe even a threesome if that would make him happy. I thought I was being magnanimous, giving him the same leeway I'd taken. His look of pure disgust was like a slap in the face. Is that really what you think this is about? That I'm just jealous? That I want permission to cheat too? His voice was glacial. I don't want an open marriage. I don't want other women. I wanted a wife who kept her promises. Then came the ultimatum, cold and clear. If you ever mention this again, open marriages, threesomes, any of it, I'm filing for divorce immediately, no matter the cost. I knew he meant it. It was etched in his eyes. It was then that I truly grasped how badly I'd misread, not just the situation, but Brandon himself. I'd projected my own discontent onto him, assuming his needs were as base as mine had become. I suggested couples therapy, and surprisingly, he agreed. But those sessions became just another charade. He'd answer questions politely, dutifully complete the exercises, even do the homework, but there was nothing real behind it all. No real desire to connect, just robotic compliance. After each session, we returned home to the same silence. Months crawled by. I lost weight. Sleep became a luxury, and anxiety became a constant knot in my chest. Meanwhile, Brandon seemed fine. He got a promotion at work, started going to the gym like clockwork, took the girls on weekend trips. To give me space, he'd say in front of them, as if he was doing me a favor instead of avoiding me. I found myself obsessively checking his phone when he wasn't looking, convinced he was having an affair of his own. But there was nothing. No suspicious texts, no late nights, nothing to validate my fears. It was almost disappointing to find nothing I could use against him, nothing to even the score. The hardest part was watching him with Haley and Julia. He was still the same loving father, helping with homework, showing up at school events, and making Sunday morning pancakes. They worshipped him, completely oblivious to the fact that when they weren't around, their father couldn't stand being in the same room as their mother. "Why are you working so hard to keep up this pretense?" I finally asked him one night after tucking the girls in. "Why not just tell them the truth and leave if you hate me so much?" Brandon looked at me for a long time before answering. "Because unlike you, I don't make decisions based solely on my immediate gratification. Our daughters deserve a stable home until they're ready to leave it." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. It's been nearly 2 years since what they call D-Day on the infidelity support forums. I've been lurking there in my loneliness. 2 years of living with a man who is physically present but emotionally absent. 2 years of maintaining our perfect couple illusion for the neighbors, our families, our daughters. Haley goes to college next year. Julia will follow 2 years later. The clock is ticking on the remnants of my marriage, and I know it. I've tried everything. Apologies, attempts at seduction, playing the guilt card, anger, even acting indifferent. Nothing can penetrate the wall Brandon has erected between us. Sometimes I catch him watching me when he thinks I won't notice. There's no anger in his eyes anymore, which is almost worse. Instead, there's just a blankness, complete indifference, as if I'm a stranger he's temporarily sharing space with. The husband who used to notice every new dress, every haircut, now looks right through me, like I'm invisible. Last week I found paperwork in his desk drawer, financial planning documents, information about apartments near his office, a consultation receipt from a divorce attorney dated just weeks after he discovered the affair. He's been plotting his escape for almost 2 years, just waiting for the right moment. And I realize that while I've been desperately trying to salvage something already dead, Brandon has been quietly building his escape route. The most excruciating part is that I still love him, or at least I love the man he was, the life we had. I long for the feeling of his arms around me, the deep rumble of his laugh, the way he used to look at me, like I held the sun and the moon in my hands, and I threw it all away for a fleeting spark with a man who didn't even bother to text after we both lost our jobs. Last night, Brandon finally spoke to me, not just passing by, but truly spoke. It was the first time in weeks. "I'm taking Julia to shop for a homecoming dress tomorrow," he stated, his voice as even as if he were discussing the weather with an acquaintance. "She wants us both there. Can you make it?" "Of course," I managed to say, a ridiculous wave of gratitude washing over me for this minuscule piece of normalcy. "I wouldn't miss it." He nodded, already turning away. "Brandon," I called out, my voice cracking slightly, "will it ever get better? Will you ever forgive me truly?" He paused in the doorway, his back a wall between us. For a heartbeat, I thought he would ignore me entirely. "I've already forgiven you, Courtney," he finally said, the words soft but distinct. I had to, for my own sake. But forgiveness doesn't erase things, and it doesn't equal staying. He left, not turning back, and I was left alone to face the truth I've been desperately avoiding. My marriage is dead. It died the moment I decided my vows were less important than a temporary thrill. In less than 3 months, Haley graduates high school. In 5, she'll be off to college. And then, the clock will truly start ticking. I can see my future stretching out before me, a bleak and empty landscape, divorce papers, selling the house that holds our memories, dividing the life we built, watching Brandon build a new life without me, while I'm left drowning in regret, clinging to the ghosts of what we once shared. God, I wish I could go back. I fantasize about stopping myself from sending that first suggestive text to Eric, from lingering late at the office that night, from crossing lines that cannot be uncrossed. But time only flows one way, and every action has its consequence. Mine has devastated me. The night Brandon discovered those texts, he asked me a question I couldn't answer then. Was it worth it? 2 years later, as I lie alone in our oversized bed while he retreats to the guest room, the answer screams in my ears. Absolutely nothing could ever be worth this emptiness, this slow, agonizing collapse of everything I ever valued. I made my choice, and now I'm drowning in it. Each day, I watch my husband go through the motions of being my husband while secretly planning his escape. Each night, I fall asleep knowing that I destroyed something precious that can never be rebuilt. And the most devastating part is that I have no one to blame but myself, though God knows I've tried to deflect that blame. To Brandon for being too predictable, to Eric for his pursuit, to my job for the pressure that pushed me toward reckless decisions. But the truth is simple and brutal. I was selfish. I craved excitement without responsibility. I thought I could have it all, the comfort and security of my marriage and the thrill of an affair. Instead, I'm facing a future with absolutely nothing but a countdown to the day Brandon finally walks out of my life for good. 3 months until graduation, 5 months until Haley leaves for college, 24 months until Julia follows. And then I'll truly understand the magnitude of what I've done, when the charade finally crumbles and I'm left standing in the ruins of the life I demolished. I never truly believed it would happen. Not really. Despite all the obvious signs, a part of me clung to the hope that Brandon would eventually forgive me, truly forgive me, that somehow we would find our way back to each other. But last week, Haley graduated. We sat side by side in the crowded auditorium, clapping and cheering as she walked across the stage in her cap and gown. Brandon's parents were there, my parents too, all of us playing our roles in this happy family facade. After the ceremony, as we posed for pictures, Brandon's arm around my shoulder felt foreign, like the touch of a stranger. His smile never reached his eyes when he looked at me, although it seemed genuine enough when he hugged Haley. We hosted a small party at the house, our last performance as a complete family unit, though no one else seemed to know. That night, after everyone had left and the girls were finally asleep, Brandon handed me an envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already filled out, simply waiting for my signature. "I've been more than fair with the financial arrangements," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, as if we were discussing a mundane business transaction. "You can keep the house until Julia graduates if you want, or we can sell it and split the proceeds. I've already found an apartment downtown." I stared at him, the reality finally crashing down on me. "You're really doing this? After all this time? You're really leaving?" "I told you I would," he replied, his voice without anger, just a quiet certainty. "I stayed for the girls. Haley's an adult now. Julia will understand." "You don't have to do this," I whispered, tears flooding my eyes. "We could still fix this, couldn't we? People move past these things." It sounded pathetic even to my own ears. Brandon looked at me, and I saw something akin to pity in his eyes, a look that stung more than anger ever could. "It's not about the affair anymore, Courtney. It's about the fact that I can't trust you, that I barely recognize you. The woman I married wouldn't have done what you did, and she certainly wouldn't have suggested I sleep with other women to even the score. I think I checked. Out of this marriage a long time ago, probably 2 years ago. I've just been waiting for the right moment to make it official." His words hung in the air, cold and final. The next day, while Julia was at a friend's, he was gone. He packed only what he needed for his new place, saying we could sort out the rest later. When Julia came home and realized he'd moved out, the devastation on her face was like a physical blow. She blamed me immediately, a 16-year-old with an uncanny instinct for truth. I knew she somehow knew that I was the root of all of it. Brandon kept his promise and didn't tell her about the affair, but she wasn't stupid. She barely spoke to me after that. Within weeks, everyone knew. I tried to control the narrative, suggesting we'd simply grown apart, but the story felt hollow, even to me. Then came the real hammer blow. Brandon started dating. Not casually, not playing the field, but seriously dating someone from his office, a woman named Rebecca. Even her name sounds wholesome, trustworthy. I saw them together at a restaurant downtown, having lunch with a friend of my own. He looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't witnessed in years. My friend saw them too, and her eyes flicked to me with pity. "Did you know?" she asked softly. I just shook my head, a lump forming in my throat that choked off any words. After that, the whispers began. The invitations dwindled. Friends we'd shared for years slowly gravitated toward him. Even my parents, who'd initially offered support, started making comments about second chances and how Brandon seems to be doing so well since meeting Rebecca at Julia's tennis match. 8 months after he moved out, Julia told me he had proposed to Rebecca, her voice a strange mix of excitement and thinly veiled accusation. "Dad's getting married again. Rebecca's really nice. She actually listens to me." The divorce was finalized last month. Brandon and Rebecca are planning a spring wedding, and Julia asked if she could live with them after they marry. Haley calls from college, but she visits her father's apartment whenever she's home. She only stops by the house now out of obligation. This beautiful home, once overflowing with love and laughter, now feels like a cold, empty monument to a life that's gone. I finally faced the questions I was too afraid to ask myself before. Brandon hadn't been secretly plotting his escape from the beginning. He had genuinely tried to forgive me. It was my own behavior afterward that destroyed any chance of reconciliation. The manipulation, the suggestion of an open marriage, the refusal to take responsibility. "You weren't sorry you cheated," he said during what turned out to be our last real conversation. "You were sorry you got caught." And he was right. I wasn't truly remorseful, not at first. I was just terrified of the consequences, desperate to cling to my comfortable life. By the time I realized what I'd truly lost, it was far too late. I ran into Eric last week, the first time since we were both fired. He's married now, too, to someone younger. He barely acknowledged me, just a curt nod of recognition. The passionate affair that I risked everything for wasn't even memorable enough for him to feel awkward seeing me again, just another notch on his belt. So here I am, alone in this cavernous house, filled with photos I can't bear to look at, but can't bring myself to take down. The divorce settlement was generous. Brandon always was the better person between us. But money doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't call to see if you're okay, doesn't remember your favorite ice cream, doesn't hold your hand through good news or bad. I foolishly believed Brandon's rage would be the worst outcome of my affair. I was so wrong. His indifference, the complete lack of feeling, cut deeper than any anger ever could have. And now, this is the real consequence, watching him move on, build a life filled with happiness, while mine feels like it's collapsing inward. It's not deliberate cruelty on his part. It's simply the inevitable fallout from the path I chose. There are nights, usually when the silence is deafening, when I find myself holding my phone, my thumb hovering over his number. I type out messages, elaborate apologies, desperate pleas, then delete them before they ever leave my drafts. What could I possibly say? I'm sorry? It's a hollow phrase, worn thin from overuse. I miss you? That would only inflict unnecessary guilt on him, a burden he shouldn't have to bear. I still love you? That became meaningless the moment I broke our vows, the moment I shattered his trust. So instead, I exist in a perpetual state of regret. I force a smile during Julia's increasingly infrequent visits. She's pulling away, and I can't blame her. I meticulously pack care packages for Haley at college, hoping a tangible expression of love can somehow compensate for my failings. I go to work, come home to an empty house, eat dinner alone at the kitchen table, and I'm left to grapple with the agonizing question of how I could have been so utterly blind, so unbelievably selfish, so convinced that happiness lay elsewhere when everything I truly needed was already right here. I remember Brandon asking me long ago if it was worth it. His question echoes in my mind every single day, and the answer, the stark, unwavering truth, is a constant ache in my heart. Nothing was worth this. Absolutely nothing could ever justify the pain I caused, the life I destroyed,